Unlike the fungus who communicate in silence, we have ambulances and sirens. Not as effective because they're usually going all the time, which means that issues are surmounting with little that anyone around can do upon hearing them other than getting out of the way. But that doesn't solve the problem. And almost as if it was Custer's last stand, you know that the last thing you do, that you just want to make sure that you're going out the right way. If you were stuck and there was nothing else to do and there's this giant bell there, you would ring it and hope that there's a miracle, a bird flies down and saves the day. You don't utilize things until it's too late, and better safe than sorry. We don't ring the bell. The bell is just the core. Or if there was a zombie apocalypse and an outbreak and everyone was running around screaming, you would ring that bell to help notify anything. That would be the least you could do. Trust me, you would do that if it had come to that measure. Fighting fire with fire, because the opposition is not fire, that is swamp muck. If you're going for the truth, that fire is what the Christians call the Holy Ghost. The Holy Ghost fire, you're fighting the swamp muck. It's a clear difference. I mean, it comes down to the kids. And when measures are immeasurable, the irony starts rising like oil in water. Or in this case, marker on whiteboard. Jesus called the devil the Lord of the Flies, as anything cruel and unusual spreads like how fungus would speak to each other without words. The AI, it wouldn't be invented unless we came up with a computer language to open its bit file from us typing in a text file. Just as if the fungus wasn't around, pretty soon the coral reef isn't going to be around. Pretty soon, what if we're not going to be around? The AI would look at us as the coral reef that got extinguished. And its communication system was better than ours, whereas we're looking at the coral reef's communication system is inferior of our trash being thrown into the ocean. On a lighter note, if God didn't shorten the days, then flesh wouldn't have appeared. Well, we see here where these flowers are wild and they're coming, but once you mow the grass, that they're going to be gone even quicker. So at what length would it take to regrow the petals from the flower compared to the blade of grass? 9 out of 10 times the grass grows quicker because it doesn't have petals. But how much quicker? And then you would have to relate that to anything negative to see how you can moderate it to overcome the negative aspects in order to not get eradicated in any case. Is this a TV? Judge a book by its cover, but always question labels. That's what you have to know, the safety and precaution of guidelines. Speak on a bluebird. If I wanted to dye this bird blue, how would I do that? I don't know, but if it were a flower, you would put blue dye into its soil. In a compost pile, but then there's something just like this, for example, is not a compost pile. This is not going to dissolve and enrich in the soil. It just attracts like flies and bad air because the soil recycles into the air, it rains down, and that's what you have to deal with. The Silicon Valley scheduled in a manner that they should be tailored. For one, because if you're part of that AI security, partially because no one quite understands what that is even. They're not going to be opening their mouth and blurping because it gives them more of an advantage in a high road, the more that they can freely do what they will with the But I'll tell you one thing, if I hear a helicopter chopping, chop, 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 I can feel those blades hitting me. I'll tell you one thing, that's just like the subwoofers in a car that you hear on the road, and it's banging, boom, boom, boom. And that's illegal. The cop will pull you over and disturbing the peace, write you a ticket. But if a helicopter is chopping even louder, they get away from it scot-free because the police aren't going up there to write them a ticket, I guarantee you that. In this scenario, the dandelions and the tulips are similar in color. However, they're just a bit different. The dandelions do not need to get planted with seeds because in their genomes, they come up without hassle. The tulips, on the other hand, are larger, and I think, yeah, they need to get planted by hand. Whereas it's just all it comes down to what gauges are made of from a calibrated system. We can look over here at these panels and you notice the difference immediately. That this lock is not electric. I'll have you know that it's just a bit different. The difference in the calibration of the bits in the lock system is not too far from the calibrated system of the electric box. The irony is that it's being used to keep the other from use. The reason I was mentioning Tin Man was I wanted to bring something else to your attention. When you're doing like workout and curls, I do that and I'm kind of bony. I noticed that like my wrist has like this nub on it and the nub kept hitting the metal, and I'm thinking, this is like if it was a dipstick and I was a Tin Man, I would like put the nub and on my wrist and refurbish it with like a dipstick and be able to pull it out and read it as a gauge as to what in that area needs to be better taken conditioned of, because it felt out of place when I was curling and my nub kept hitting the metal. I felt like it could be handled different, and it's not too far-fetched to say that because in each one of your limbs you have a nerve that is elongated over a few feet, and if you were metal, that would be able to be pulled out of your body and checked at if you were to read it as a gauge, if you were the Tin Man. And on that note, I'd like to talk more about the Wizard of Oz, the Tin Man. If I was a manifestation of the Tin Man, which is just a robot crossed between a doll, if a doll can come to life, I believe that that's what the Tin Man was. Despite him being metal, he wasn't a robot because there was no electricity through him. No, when there was water on him, the first thing he said was not that I had been short circuit. When he said there was water on him, he had rusted. It was what turned him off, meaning that like what a doll would occur, since a doll is made out of fabric, what would happen to them is a string would get loose and that would make them in a permanent stuck position. Similarly for humans, what either case, if you have metal in your body or if your fabric is your skin, what happens if you fall into a black hole is the same. A spaghettification would surmount by each of the atoms being torn over and over again until there's nothing but a string of your entire body, and that would be the gauge of the most ideal symmetry for either insecurity anywhere, anytime. A black hole spaghettification is inevitable. Though I'm mentioning movies and fictional objects, I take no joke in either of them. Insecurities are the number one thing that are occurring in all directions until you point them out and shine light on them. When all the darkness is around, you know that there's always going to be the sun. That's where a black hole loses. Unless you get within the event horizon, the sun envelopes from all the red and blue shifting.